Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Got a really unique item sitting here on the table from Infitac. It's a thermal optic and the model is FMP13. What this is going to allow is thermal in the format of a red dot. Now this is meant to be mounted on one of the noisy things you typically see on this channel. However, YouTube's rules prohibit showing that combination. So I'm going to show this like I would a digital camera. It's a little box. There's the thermal sensor side of it and the display side of it. And I'm going to push the up button and hold it for 3 seconds and let it boot up. And I'm going to take a quick second and I'm going to get rid of this little fuzz that's on there because it's not a defect in the display. But it has multiple reticles, and of course the pattern you're seeing on it is a combination of the camera frame rate, the frame rate of this, and the lighting. So when you're looking at it with your human eye, it's very solid. You don't get this rotating pattern. But what you've got is a half zoom, 0.5 zoom, 1x zoom, and a 2x zoom. Got the battery indicator here. Uses these little CR2 batteries. And you get about 5 hours of life on one of these. It also has the ability to connect it to a Type-C USB to like a power pack, especially if you were using this on a rifle, you'd be able to do that and run it pretty much infinitely. The good news is if you plug it in, it doesn't attempt to charge the battery because these little batteries are not rechargeable. So it doesn't attempt to charge the battery. So you can kind of plug it into USB, run it off USB, and then unplug it and it'll switch instantaneously to the battery, but you don't have to worry about the battery exploding on you. You heard it clicking a little bit. That's the built-in NUC, non-uniformity compensation. It takes care of that for you. Here's the battery door, and of course it is designed to be water resistant. The buttons here are actually used to control the menus. So if I hold the bottom button down, it takes me to a menu where I can configure it, and I'm not going to bore you by going through every possibility of operating the menu, but you can see there's a number of different menu options. The other thing that you can do with it, if I hold this button again for a few seconds, it'll come back into normal mode, but it's a touch screen. So if I swipe, you see the reticle changing, and if I swipe up and down, the color palette changes. Blue hot, white hot, green hot, etc. And I'm going to have to show, what I'm going to end up having to do is, because this has a 2-yard zeroing distance, a 2-yard minimum focus distance, I'm going to mount this on a board with a camera behind it so that I can show you some of the other features, like show it actually working for what it's intended to. So this very first section of the video here at the table is going to be more talking about the specs and everything else. And then I'll actually get into showing it in practice. One of the other things that I'll mention is it comes with an RMR footprint plate, and then you can order additional plates, and these are about $45 to fit the thing you're going to put it on. And it's meant to be put on either a pistol or a rifle. And basically what you would do is you would mount this plate in the plate mounting position. You see these little screw holes, and then on the bottom of it, this plate fits on the bottom of it, and then you'd screw it in, you'd screw it down, which means you can easily remove it and put it on a different mounting point. So if you had multiple plates, multiple things you wanted to use this on, of course you may have to re-zero it for those different things. But this is an expensive toy. MSRP is $6.99 on this, which is interesting though, because there's one other on the market. It's made by Holosun, and it seems to be a lot physically larger than this, and the price is over twice the price of this. So this is coming in at actually a pretty attractive price. Thermal under $1,000 is pretty attractive, and but it's still not something that you're going to want to have 4 or 5 of these things potentially. So you may end up moving it about, and this setup makes it relatively easy to do that. So it is thermal, and some of the specs on thermal are different than you're used to with conventional red dots. It's a 60 hertz system. It's 256 by 192 for the thermal sensor at 12 micron, which is actually a pretty small dot. It actually, you'll see when you get to the later part of this video where I actually have it where you can start seeing it in practice, it's actually got pretty good resolution. It really is pretty good. And the window itself is a 1.4 inch display, and it's 300 by 600 resolution on it. And you can, again, I mentioned zoom of 1/2x, 1x, and 2x. It's actually a really good display. It's got auto brightness. That's the sensor you see right here. Because, thermal, if you're using it at night, you don't want it lighting up the whole area that you're in, so it'll tone down and it'll go up and down based on the ambient lighting. And one of the things that I've found this does, it's kind of similar to a digital camera here, where it was a hybrid of optical and thermal. You can kind of see, and of course you can't see it here, but I will demonstrate that. It kind of gives you a bit of what you would see optically, like in a conventional camera, mixed with the thermal, so you can see more than just what's hot and what's not. It actually makes it real easy to see. It does come with these little thermal zeroing targets, and they get hot and they make it easy to zero. But what I found is with that hybrid capability, it'll actually work with tinfoil on a conventional target. The tinfoil will be enough difference in temperature from the ambient that you can actually zero it with that. It worked out pretty well. It's 2 inches long. It's 1.7 inches tall up to the top of this little notch, which actually hosts a cutout that can be used as a backup sight. And it's 1.5 inches wide. So it's a little bit on the big side, but it's smaller than the other one that's on the market. It weighs less than 4 ounces. And speaking of Holosun, I do happen to have a typical Holosun. Now, this is a regular red dot. This isn't one of the, this isn't their thermal. But just to put it in perspective, here's your typical enclosed optic. And if I put them up, side by side, you'll see it's bigger than your typical fully enclosed red dot, but not massively bigger. But it is smaller, to the best of my knowledge, than the Holosun thermal, which is much bigger than this. But just kind of give you a size perspective. It's kind of hard to tell with it just in my hands, from how big is it versus how small is it. And one of the things I'll show you too, any of the menus you're in, you can adjust settings by swiping up and down on the touchscreen. It's actually pretty well designed. So a couple other numbers, because again, thermal tends to be a little bit about the numbers. I'll throw a few more numbers out, and then we'll get into the part of the video where I actually mount this thing up and you can actually see what it looks like. But I mentioned the size of it. It has a net D of less than 25, which is the noise threshold. That results in very, very sharp images. Some of these numbers I've thrown out, like net D of less than 25, 60 hertz, 12 micron, these are the numbers you would see in something that has a comma in it typically. So this has got a lot of the higher end features at a not high end price. And from a field of view, it's a 13.5 inch or 13.5 degree horizontal and 10.1 degree vertical, which results in 71 by 53 feet at 100 yards. So by the time you get out that far out, you're actually hitting a pretty wide field, and it's going to start to be a little more difficult to identify the thing you're at. But this is a red dot style. This isn't a scope. 100 yards is probably about the max for most people's eyes effective use of something like this. But the mere fact that they're even quoting 100-yard distances tells you that their thermal sensor is a pretty good sensor to even work at that distance. Again, you're looking at features that normally would have a comma, in some cases 2 digits in front of that comma, at a 700-ish MSRP plus whatever plate you might decide to buy. The plates are about $45 if you decide to buy a plate other than the RMR format one that comes with it. Which, even the RMR one, any gun that you could mount an RMR on, you could mount this on with that plate. But if you use a plate that's native to that footprint, like the Glock MOS, it's going to lower it. So instead of having a plate and then the optic, you can lower it a little bit. So that's the advantage to choosing to use one of those plates, is it brings it down a little bit. And of course you could put it on a rifle as equally well. Okay, so we're done with the part of it where I'm sitting here at the table and I'm throwing numbers at you, which, unfortunately numbers are very important to people that are looking at thermal. Time to put this onto a board. So with a camera mounted on it, I kind of have to set up this little Rube Goldberg thing to do this, to actually let you see what it really looks like in use. One thing just to call out before we get started, the moving lines you see scrolling across the screen and the graininess, that's all an artifact of a camera taking a picture of a video screen. When you're looking at the screen in person live with the Mark I eyeball, it's perfectly clear. There's no moving lines. In fact, the 0.5x at the top is far sharper than I can get this camera to focus. Menus are fairly simple to navigate. Hold the bottom button briefly, the menu will appear. Hit the top button, it'll cycle through the options. If you picked an option such as contrast, you hit the bottom button to get into it, and then use the top and bottom buttons to adjust the setting, and then hold the bottom button briefly, take it back out, hold it briefly again, and you're out of the menus. So menus are easy to work with just the 2 buttons. And of course you can use the touch screen as well to do various different things. You can swipe across the screen to change the different reticle options, and you can swipe down or up to change the color palette. So as I'm flipping through the different color palettes. You can do the same cell phone pinch and squeeze type motions to change the zoom. However, you almost have to have like microscopic fingers to get it to work. So it took me a couple tries to get it to work. The screen's so small, if you got bigger fingers, it's kind of tough to do that, but you can. That's how it's designed to work. You can also do it through the menu. Well, I hope you found that interesting. If you want to see it in its natural habitat, there's going to be an upcoming video where I actually mount it on something, but of course I can't do that on YouTube. It'll have to be on Player or Rumble. And once we put that out, you can actually see it in use for real. But what I just did at least allows you to see everything about how it would work while mounted on a board. And overall, I think this is a pretty promising product. And I know I mentioned, at the 700-ish price point, you're probably not going to have 4 or 5 of these, but you might want to have 2. Your rifle and your sidearm might be a good number. 2 might be the magic number of these things. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell to be notified. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, Player. We're pretty much everywhere. And thank you.